I call upon the spirit of the owl, messenger of wisdom. Welcome to the temple of the owl. Merry meet seekers of knowledge. My name is Mattow, and I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. Hope you guys sending you guys some good vibes out there if you need them today. Here at the temple of the owl, where we talk about magic and spirituality through the perspective of a modern witch. And Temple of the Owl is in Northern California. Thank you guys for listening, and thank you for listening on the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting. Merry meet you guys. Well, today I want to share something with you guys. Today we're going to be talking about altars and building altars and why it's important. So let's explore my massive library. I want to share all my knowledge with you guys that I've learned. And over the years, I've learned that there's more to this world than what we can see. And that curiosity has led me to the religion of witchcraft. And I want to share some of the stuff with you guys, and we're talking about that today. We're going to talk about something that sits at the heart of many witchcraft and pagan practices. We're going to be talking about altars. Now, what is an altar, and why are they important? Why are there different kinds of altars? But what I want to talk about today is helping you guys go through it and build your own altar. So light a candle, grab your favorite drink, open your book of shadows, and come with me through the gates of the temple. So let's build an altar. Let's talk about first, what is an altar? Well, an altar is a designated place where somewhere you could practice divination, meditation, prayer, and reflection or magic. But an altar doesn't have to be elaborate. It could be an entire table covered with candles, statues, and herbs, or it could be something as simple as a small shelf with one candle and a meaningful object. The altar is ultimately about intention, and it creates a physical location where your spiritual practice has a home. Now, think about this for a moment. Now, most of our lives are filled with distractions like phones and TVs, work, traffic, and bills. The altar gives you a place where you could stop and breathe and remember what you're doing here. It becomes a physical reminder of your spiritual path. Now, one of the reasons that it's important is because humans have always created sacred spaces. Ancient civilizations built temples, and people created shrines. Families honored their ancestors, and religious traditions established places of offerings and prayer. Now, modern witches and pagans continue this tradition in their own ways. The altar can help you create a boundary between the ordinary and the sacred. When you approach your altar, you're telling yourself that this is a moment set aside for something meaningful. The physical objects help reinforce that intention. The candle can remind you of fire, the bowl for water, a stone to represent earth, and incense to represent air. You can have a statue to represent a deity, a photograph to represent an ancestor, or a tarot deck. The objects become a visual language. Now, it's important to remember certain things. Now, your altar doesn't have to look like mine. Every altar is completely unique. Now, this is something I wanted to talk about. There's no universal rule saying that every altar needs these objects or that objects. Now, your altar should reflect your tradition and your beliefs and your relationship with the magic. You don't need to spend $500 on an altar. You don't need to have a giant collection of crystals. You don't have to have every magical tool. And you don't have to copy anyone else's, like anyone from Instagram or TikTok. So start with meaning and ask yourself, what do I want this space to represent? And the answer should guide to everything else. So let's start by choosing our sacred space. The first step is finding the location. It could be a small table, a bookshelf, a nightstand, any kind of shelf, or like a windowsill. You can have like a portable altar box. You can create traveling altars. The important thing is that you have a place where you can intentionally practice. Now remember, you don't have to be permanent. Some people, if you live with roommates or if you have children, you don't have enough space, that's okay. Your altar can be temporary. And you can set it up when you're practicing and then put everything away afterwards. Magic doesn't require, a huge mansion or anything like that. So next you're going to clean the space. We talked about this before, about cleansing the areas. So before placing anything on your altar, clean the physical space. Like wipe it down like with a wipe. And then remove the clutter. Organize the objects. And then if it fits your tradition, you can spiritually cleanse the space. You might use incense or prayer, visualization, or even sound, like a bell, like a cleansing herb, like a sage. So set your intention. You don't have to believe that the smoke or the object physically removes some invisible substance, but cleansing also serves as a ritual tradition. You're telling yourself that the old energy is finished and you're beginning something new. Decide what your altar is for. This is one of the most important steps. So ask yourself, what is this altar for? Is it for deity worship, ancestor honoring, meditation, spell work? What are you trying to honor? Is it some sort of pagan tradition? So your purpose determines, what you're going to put on your altar. Like if you're going to put photographs or any objects connected to the loved ones, or you might have some sort of statue or deity, or a seasonal altar honoring the wheel of the year. Now choose your centerpiece. Give your altar a focal point. It might be a statue, a candle, a crystal, a cauldron, or a sacred symbol, or a photograph. The centerpiece doesn't have to be expensive. It could be a stone you found while you were hiking or some sort of crystal. Just remember that the centerpiece creates the connection. Let's talk about an altar cloth. An altar cloth isn't required, but it can help you define the space. You could choose an altar cloth with color for your purpose, like green for nature, blue for peace, red for passion, or white for purification, or black for mystery and protection, or gold for sunlight and abundance. These aren't universal rules, but if it means something special to you, like if purple is your favorite color, then your relationship to that color matters. So after that, we're going to talk about the elements. Most of the traditions use the classical elements. So anything on your altar that can represent earth, like soil or salt, crystals, or even the pentacle. To use that for earth. Air could be represented by incense or feathers or herbs, burning the herbs. Fire can be represented by candles, anything that represents the sun or fire. Water can be represented by a bowl or a chalice, seashells, anything connected to the oceans and the rivers. Now, water represents emotion, intuition, and healing. And you don't have to use all four, but use what makes sense to you when you're making your altar. Now, add your magical tools. You can bring your tools that you're going to use to the altar. So you can have your athame, your wand, your chalice, and your cauldron. You can have your besom, your broom, anything that brings balance to the elements. And you can also bring your book of shadows to record, your spiritual journey as you practice. But all the tools only the tools are useful that you're going to use. You don't have to fill your altar with objects that, are just there. Use the ones that you're gonna use. You could add nature. We have that relationship with nature, so bring nature to your altar, like flowers and leaves and stuff like that, seashells, anything that you could think of, fruit. Let your altar change with the seasons. So, spring you can have flowers. In summer, you can have herbs. Like in the autumn, you could have leaves or pumpkins, like harvest imagery. And in the winter, you can use evergreens. Your altar can become a living calendar for the natural world. Then we're going to keep adding symbols. This is a way we can connect with what we're talking about. We talked about symbols in the last episode. You could use the pentacle, the triple moon symbol, the tree of life symbol that's connected to any kind of particular deity or tradition. You can learn the history of the symbol and then use it on your altar. You could use runes, whatever is comfortable for you to put onto your altar. So make the altar yours. Now, step back and look at it. What does it feel like? Does it represent what you believe? Does it make you sit down and practice? So if you need anything else, if the answer is yes, then you've built your altar. And that's really what the heart of all of it is just building a place to connect to the spiritual world. Now, there's different kinds of altars, and there's many different kinds. There's no right or wrong way. We have devotional altars, where we're dedicated to like a statue or an image. We use candles and symbols. So say you're honoring like Isis, you can include symbols for those. If you're honoring Hecate, you can put symbols for her. And the most important thing is that if you're learning about a deity, rather than simply buying the objects associated with them, let's learn about them together and put those items on your altar. You can have an ancestor altar. One ancestor altar is dedicated to remembering and honoring the ancestors. And that could have photographs, names, any kind of heirlooms, or anything like that from the people, like jewelry or necklaces that they wore. This kind of altar can become a place for remembrance. It doesn't have to have any supernatural beliefs. It can just simply be a sacred space where you remember the people whose lives came before ours. You can have an elemental altar. This altar focuses on earth, air, water, and fire. And you can create the 4 seasons. It's a place to represent each object from each position. And it can be used for someone learning about elemental magic. You have a seasonal altar. You can put things throughout the year, like using the 8 Sabbaths, the holy days. We talked about those. So like for Samhain, you could put pumpkins. You could put symbols for like death or rebirth. For Yule, you could put evergreens and candles, sun imagery. For Ostra, you could put eggs, spring imagery. Your altar could be a reflection of the wheel of the year. You can have a working altar that's designed especially for magical practice. This might be where you perform like candle magic, spell work, divination, or do like ritual offerings. Because you're actively working there, it may look different from the devotional altar. We also have travel altars. This is one that's perfect for people if you don't have much space. A travel altar might fit into a small box, but inside you could have like tiny candles, tiny stones, like small crystals, or a little miniature wand, or a small notebook. You don't need to have a giant altar to practice witchcraft. Sometimes everything you need could fit into the palm of your hand. Another one's interesting is digital altars. Now, it's a modern idea. Could you create a digital altar? Maybe like a phone or computer isn't traditionally an altar, but you can create sacred space that has images like music, prayers, or deities. And then you can have your Book of Shadows and put your Book of Shadows in the computer. Well, we always have that underlying human desire to create sacred space, and that is ancient. So why not use like modern technology now? Let's talk about offerings. Now, offerings have a long history in religious practice. Depending on your tradition, offerings might include like water, bread, or fruit, or even like incense or wine, some other beverage. When you make offerings, think about what the offering represents, and remember practical considerations like don't leave food where it could attract pests or harm animals, and don't burn anything unattended. Never leave a candle burning when you leave the room. The altar should be a place of connection, not a fire hazard. Your altar is a mirror. Now, one of my favorite ways to think about my altar is the altar is the mirror. It reflects what you value. If your altar is covered in books, perhaps knowledge matters to you. If it's full of plants and stones, then nature is central to your spirituality. If it contains photographs of family members, like an ancestry, this is important. It contains the symbols of a deity. Perhaps divination is at the heart of your practice. Your altar tells a story, and the story is yours. So ask yourself, now I want to turn this conversation over to you guys. If you're going to build your altar, what would you put on it? Would you create like a moon altar, a nature altar, or some sort of ancestor altar dedicated to your animal companions, or perhaps something completely different? What would be the centerpiece? What symbols would you choose? Would you use candles, crystals, or plants? You could put symbols like runes. You could put photographs. But most importantly, why? So tell us what you want to put on your altar. Tell us what each object means to you, because that's where the real story begins. So altar doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to look like anybody else's. And it doesn't have to be permanent. An altar is a place where intention becomes physical. A place where the ordinary can become sacred. A place where you can pause, reflect, remember, and pray. You can meditate and explore different spirituality traditions. So when you build your altar, build it with meaning. Build it with respect. And build it with curiosity. And most importantly, build it as your own. So this is, what we talk about here at the Temple of the Owl. Thank you guys for stepping through the gates with me and exploring different types of things. We're talking about the altar tonight, but I wanted to share this information, share this knowledge with you guys. And, what do you think about, powerful objects that you can put on your altar? Is it a crystal? What I'm trying to say is the most powerful tool is not just a crystal or a candle or a statue. It's your intention, and it's what you bring to it. And I hope you guys out there, if you have some sort of way of building an altar, if you have different ways, there's many different ways, like I was saying earlier, there's many different ways, there's many different types, not just one, that there's not a universal one way to do this. I feel it's important that we just take that time to put the objects on our altar and build it to have that relationship with the divine, with the spirituality, and take that time, set it aside to have that spiritual practice, and step away from all the mundane stuff in the world, all the traffic and the working and everything that we do, and set aside that time to have that relationship with spirituality, with our own divine inside of us. Well, I hope you guys have any ideas. If you guys have any other ideas, maybe I didn't cover or anything like that. Have you guys seen different types of altars? What's your favorite object to put on the altar? But yeah, I just want to talk about that and put that information out there, talking about altars and why it's important, why it's important to build an altar and have that time. So I want to thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for listening to Temple of the Owl. My name is Matt's Owl. Thank you guys for listening on KUAP Digital Broadcasting, the Troubled Minds Radio Network. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. We'll release the spirit of the owl. Thank you guys. Blessed be.
For many centuries, witchcraft has been considered evil, associated with the devil and all things dark. Let's break these stereotypes with your host, Matt Sow, of the Temple of the Owl. Let's talk about magic, of the old ways to explore the many roles of the witch, learn the tools of the craft, the history of the science behind this ancient, earth-based religion on the Troubled Minds Radio Network KUAP Digital Broadcasting. For centuries, witchcraft has been considered evil and associated with the devil. Stories of the wicked witch of the West and the evil queen who poisoned Snow White and Owl have portrayed witches as antagonistic monsters. Marry me. My name is Matt Sow. And with the spirit of the owl, messenger of wisdom, I want to break those stereotypes and shed some light on the positive side of the craft. And shed some light, and with the spirit of the owl, on the positive side. My name is Matt Sow, and messenger of wisdom, secret of knowledge, explore the mysteries on the positive side of the craft. Secret of knowledge, explore the mysteries of the universe. So let's learn and teach each other at the Temple of the Owl. For many centuries, witchcraft has been considered evil, associated with the devil and all things dark. Let's break these stereotypes with your host, Matt Sow,